Hello, welcome back to another edition of the Bebonos podcast. This is your host, Brian Bullock, and with me tonight I have Ed Miller, also known on Twitter as at Ed Miller Poker. How you doing tonight, Ed?
Hey, how you doing?
Thanks for joining the podcast. So if you're familiar with the podcast, any new guests here, I usually like to let them introduce themselves from a betting perspective. So things like your initial introduction to betting, what you like to bet, what got you interested in betting, even poker, whatever, favorite betting moments, things like that. So feel free to introduce yourself from that perspective.
Sure, yeah. My name is Ed. So I got started with gambling a while ago, about 20 years ago, um, with poker. I had a job, and the job kind of went south, and that was like right around the time that Paradise Poker and the early online poker sites were getting revved up, and so I decided that online poker was something to do. And right around the time that my job was kind of not working out anymore, I gotten good enough to kind of make a living playing poker online. But then I started to play more live poker, so and that's kind of what I did for a few years, full time. And then I decided to write some poker books because that's like a lot more chill of a lifestyle,
Okay.
to be honest, than all the grinding. It was kind of like 2 hours a day, you know, write 1,000 words and kind of be done for the day. So um, so I did that for a while, and then I got back into the gambling grind with DFS. I've been kind of paying attention to DFS since it started. I don't know, in '09 or something, and I thought it was kind of a broken game, but an interesting one. And then it took me by surprise when all the investment money started getting poured into like FanDuel and DraftKings, and I finally, I was like, I think this is actually worth grinding now. So I got into it, and my focus was on the kind of on the game theory aspect of the GPPs. That was my angle from the beginning. Was I kind of saw how the GPPs worked, and I said, well, this is a game theory game more than a project the players game, and I kind of expected people not to be playing it that way, and for the most part they weren't, and so that was my angle, and I just kind of grinded that for a while, and I connected with a friend in Las Vegas here who was kind of doing more sports betting for a long time, and we connected and started doing the in play models together, and so that's been kind of like how I got into the sports stuff. Was about 5 years ago with the DFS, and then deciding to go toward in play betting.
Okay. So when it comes to the poker books that you've written, I've always been curious, like how long a book takes to write. So like for the books that you wrote, like was it a process of like years or like just like months?
No, yeah, I would say beginning to end, it's like I don't know, maybe 6 months for me, and
Okay.
and that's like it's like I mean, my writing process is I kind of try to write 1,000 to 1,500 words a day, and then the books are 60,000 words. So
Sure.
that's maybe 2 months of writing, and then there's some editing time in there, and then I did for especially for the later books, I did my own layout. Some of them I did my own cover, and
Okay.
there's a lot of like once the book is done being written, there's a lot of like proofread and proofread it again and proofread it again, and try to get all those errors out, because I don't like a lot of gambling books. People leave a lot of errors in there, like spelling errors or just grammar or just kind of awkward language, and kind of I was like, I don't really want those in my book. I can avoid it, so I kind of spent a little bit of extra time to kind of try to squeeze all those out as much as I could. And yeah, it's about 6 months from conception of a book to it's on the market, it's selling, and I'm thinking about what to do next.
Okay. So going into the latest book that you wrote this about the sports betting, the name of it again, I don't have it in front of me. I should
Yeah,
have.
it's called The Logic of Sports Betting, and I wrote it with my with my partner Matt David Al.
Okay. So
Yeah.
my partner, is he like does he do like the DFS stuff with you too, or
So he was the guy that I met through the DFS. But I mean,
is it?
we kind of DFS burned hot, and then we saw the writing on the wall kind of when the Ethan Gate stuff happened, and when things kind of started going south there, and we said, well, it's not really worth the and then they pulled out of Nevada. I'm in Nevada, and I
Okay.
was like, all right, well, kind of quit the DFS at that point. Um, as I said, I mean, he has a long history in the sports betting, um, you know, world going back 20 years at least, and yeah, so we just kind of like he had been doing a little bit with in play betting, I don't know, starting in 2012, 2013, something like that,
Okay.
and so yeah, we kind of decided, after the DFS dried up, we said, well, why don't we try to like on building the best in play models for the American sports. So that's what we've been doing, more or less for the last 5 years. At least that's my main work is I work on the models, and
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So going into like the book, it was actually a preface here. It was the first book I ever listened to, by the way.
Okay.
I listened to the audio part, and so I was like, well, you know, the quarantine is going to have us doing a lot of things that we never did before, and listening to books might be a thing now because I actually it was, it flowed a lot better for me than like sitting down and reading a book. Like I just can't do that. Like I don't have the attention span, but like hearing it was a lot better. So I just wanted to preface that. But as far as topics that I wanted to discuss, one of them obviously was the in-game betting portion, and you kind of touched base on how long you've been doing it, but how long has in-game betting been a thing? Because to be honest, the last time I went to Vegas was probably like in 2014 or 2015, and granted I didn't go to a lot of sports books back then, but I don't remember it being a huge thing then. Is it? Would you say it's more of a phenomenon in the past like 5 years? Because I guess even with all the sports betting I've done, I haven't really done much live betting, so I don't really know um,
Right.
how how long it's been going on.
So I mean, it kind of dates back, I think, quite a while. I mean, I think some of the guys I've talked to here, the kind of the old school guys here in Vegas were, you know, especially for big events like the Super Bowl and big one-off games, they were trying to put up live lines, and they were just doing it manually, right? They were just kind of watching the game and just putting their finger in the air and saying, "All right, -6, come get it," and I think that goes back, I don't know, certainly into the last decade. And then the more, kind of the more modern in-play betting, where there's like a feed, right? There's like a companies that basically produce line feeds, second by second, and that's a newer thing. For the American sports, it's more established in Europe, especially for soccer. Um, and tennis and some of the sports in Europe. And then and some of those same companies have feeds for the American sports, but the feeds are really the current ones that are used in the market. Have a ton of holes in the pricing, like a huge gaping holes in the pricing, and so the books that kind of deal the stuff, they know the lines are not great, in a lot of spots on, like football, NFL, college football, especially, and even, I mean, their NBA stuff is a little better, but, college basketball is, pretty weak, and the baseball too. So they kind of know that the line feeds that they use are weak. And so they really, very careful about letting people bet it. They keep the limits low. They put delays on it. They cut you off real quick if they think you're beating it, and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the current state of it. There's one or two places offshore that kind of deal it a little more seriously and take real limits, and don't put delays on it and don't cut people off. But for the most part, the layout, certainly for American sports is, books are real careful about who they let bet it and for how much.
Okay, so I don't know if this will be revealing too much to people who are listening, but do you have any specific books that you find like the I don't know, for lack of a better word, the weakest, like the ones that are easiest to exploit?
I mean, it's the line feeds are all pretty soft. I don't know that one is like the worst. There's also not very many kind of feeds. Like there's, I mean, you'll kind of get like here in Las Vegas, a lot of them use the Sport Radar feeds. That's kind of the because that has to do with the technology stack they're using here in Nevada. So
Okay.
that's not William Hill, but that's most of the other books here. And so I mean, if you, I mean, I'm not trying to knock Sport Radar, but like these are new sports for them, and a lot of them are hard to model, and it's there's some holes, in pretty much all the American sports. And you'll find that for all the feeds for pretty much every book. I mean, there's no book that I think really nails it
Okay.
yet. Yeah.
Okay. So as far as vulnerabilities for bookmakers, I know you discussed that in your in the book a little bit. Do you like? I know you're saying a lot of the places are softer. You're going to be able to exploit certain things at most books, but
Yep.
do you see these lines getting sharper, as in like harder to
So
harder to take advantage of?
so in the book, well, first of all, I mean, I I don't know how much your listeners do or don't know about what we're doing, but I mean, we're starting a company called Deck Prism Sports, where basically we're trying to fix that problem for books, and at least anyone who wants to be our customer. So, assuming and we have a couple live customers now, and assuming we get the traction I think we're going to get. I mean, I think our customers are going to have sharper lines. So I just didn't in full honesty, that's kind of what we're doing. But absent that, I mean, in the book we break it down and we say there's three types of line errors, roughly speaking, in play. And the first type is just like a pure game state error. Like it's like, whoever's making the line has the field goal is good, and it was actually not good, right? So they got one team with 3 extra points, when they make the line, or that kind of thing is actually it happens constantly. I mean, it really just like it's all the time. I mean, 3 points is a lot, but like the ball's on the wrong side of the field, so they make the line with the ball at the Broncos 30, and it's actually at the Raiders 30. I mean that happens multiple times a game, I would say, in
Okay.
American sports. Yeah, so it's like in basketball they got the score wrong when they make the line, or they got the time wrong when they make the line, or in I mean in baseball they got the the base runner's wrong or something, like just raw wrong information about the state of the game. And the reason they get it wrong is because a lot of the line feeds are fed by basically a data feed of game state information, and those data feeds for the game state information are again for the American sports. Those are not, for lack of a better term, not well error checked. They
Okay.
haven't been a high priority so far, and so kind of the systems that are in place to gather that data are not well QA'd, I would say, and
Okay.
so just a lot of kind of errors slip through, and then once that error comes through on the data feed, then whoever's making the line with it, they just bake it right into the line. So that's a big source of errors in the data feeds. Now I expect all that to improve. I mean, obviously, I don't think they're going to sit there and, I mean, I could be wrong, but I would expect that to improve fairly quickly. That raw data gathering process will improve over time, especially since the leagues, are putting a high premium on their ability to gather this data quickly and accurately. You know, I think they're I think they'll come through on that, and I think that'll improve. So that type of error I think is going to go away. And the second type of error is what I call like a kind of like a strategic error, or like a misunderstanding of the itself. Like like in baseball, for instance, if you an example would be like if it's like the seventh inning and Josh Hader's coming out, in the next inning, but the guy making the line doesn't know who Josh Hader is and doesn't really take that into account that like the best pitcher ever is about to mow three people down. So that type of error, it comes up in football, sometimes with injuries, sometimes with just kind of mismatches. It comes up in every sport, but it's like no, you didn't get the score wrong, but something's going on in the game that's like obvious to any sports fan who watches sports and has an obvious impact, but is nevertheless not reflected in the line. So that's kind of error number two. It's common, and those errors. Obviously those errors are a lot harder to get rid of, especially a lot of these companies really want to automate this process,
Sure.
where they really just want to like feed a stream of game state data into a black box algorithm or something and then spit out lines. And if you do that, it's just really hard to account for all that kind of stuff that all matters. And that as I said, like even just you don't even have to have a model necessarily to pick those errors out. You can just say, oh, I bet they didn't account for this, and you're probably right. And then the third type of error is what I call just like pure modeling error. And that's where they kind of have the situation right. And, maybe there isn't anything like particularly unusual about the situation, but basically they just did the math wrong somehow. Like they just got the wrong answer given their inputs and that's easy to do. I haven't written these models for 5 years.
Okay.
Getting the right answer at every spot in every game is, incredibly painstaking, and that's basically why it takes 5 years is because we build the model and then we watch the games and we run the models and we make the lines and we look at the market and we look at and then it's like we're off.
Yeah.
Why are we off? And then we have to go back and look, kind of try to figure out where the error was. And then a lot of times it's a modeling error. It's just there's something wrong in the code, not necessarily like whatever. It's just not the right answer, and you have to go back and fix it. And those are incredibly hard to come out because to pick up on those, you have to kind of know what the right answer is, in the first place. And I think a lot of the people who are kind of making the models and doing the stuff don't really even like they come up with minus 180 and it should be minus 270, and they don't really have any way to check their math, right? So
Okay.
yeah, so those are the three errors, and I think they're going to go away in that order of over time. So
Okay. So you thinking maybe like a couple more years of being able to take advantage of this?
I think that, yeah, I think the next few years. So what I think is going to happen in the next few years, I could be wrong. This is just this is, again, I have a startup business and I'm trying to kind of bust my way into the industry. But what I see happening is that obviously all the sports books want to compete for American market share. They all understand that people want to bet in play. It's incredibly popular when it's
Yeah.
available, especially when it's not like a Mickey Mouse product, especially when it's not like, oh yeah, the limits are cut to nothing. There's a 10-second delay, so they free roll you for 10 seconds every time you click the button. There's not when you actually offer the product for real limit with no delay, you're not rejecting bets left and right. You just let people play it. It's extremely popular product, and I think it will be for all the American sports. I think it fits American sports really well. And I think there's going to be a lot of competitive pressure to basically offer that customer experience to people. Like for instance, our customers are going to have that customer experience, right? So we're going to start entering some states. We're going to have customers. Our customers are going to be able to, take bigger bets, are going to be able to do it with no delay, and are going to be able to, and I think are going to start taking market share. And then I think there's going to be basically a competitive pressure for other books to offer the same experience, even if they don't have the same, the same people they, even if they don't have us making the lines, wherever they're getting the lines from, I mean, these contracts it's, I don't want to go too much in the weeds about, but a lot of these companies have relationships with line providers that, that are durable and that aren't going anywhere. And, and basically they're going to be trying to offer a product with a, with odds making behind it that's, in my opinion, not quite as good. And yeah, I think that's going to be an opportunity.
Okay. All right. So going into another subject of the book, I heard you mention in the book a lot about like the types of books. It was, you know, focused on the market makers versus retail books, and I know most books that you see advertised are retail books because they have a marketing budget. They're
Right.
spamming journalists and all that, and just trying to get any Joe Schmo to bet with them. So one thing that I was thinking about, like while I was listening to it, was why a sports book would ever want to be a market maker given lower profit margins, because you stress that a lot. Obviously, they're going to take on higher risk, and they're not going to be promoting themselves as much. And like you mentioned, it was like razor thin profit margins. So what would be the competitive advantage, or what's the competitive advantage of being a market maker versus a retail book?
I mean, there's a few, if you do it well, I think, I mean, and I don't want to like, I, first of all, I want to say, I think people confuse, the term market maker with a specific business model. Like for instance, everybody always goes to Pinnacle. They always say, oh, you want to be a Pinnacle copy. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, Pinnacle definitely, over the years has been a market making book in various markets. And not in every market, and and how they behave is different from sport to sport, and it's changed over the years too. But people say, oh, you want to offer 1% hold markets, and I mean, and I guess my reaction is, well, Pinnacle had one business model, but like you don't have to you know run Pinnacle's business model to use their you know to run your book. I mean, there's lots of business models out there. Market making really just means that kind of you're originating your own lines, really. I mean, that's what the market making is. It means you're taking bets, and you're moving on the betting information. And then beyond that, I think the people make assumptions about what else that book looks like that I don't think has to be true. And I think the advantages are, you're not, once you get market making, I mean, you're not beholden to anyone else's numbers. I mean, you don't have to copy anybody.
Yeah.
You don't have to buy line feeds. You don't have to, I mean, in situations where like let's say I'm a retail sports book, and I basically I'm getting most of my line information from one or two other books that maybe we're going to call more market making books. And then one of those books decides to shut their line information down, or one of those books decides to change their business model and become a retail book, or one of the, and it's like, now this kind of infrastructure that you've built to get your line information is now, it's now fragile. And I mean, I'm not saying that's that's the retail books are not profitable businesses. Obviously, a lot of them are, but certainly I think there's a big advantage in making your own number and not being dependent on external parties for something that's core to your business. That's one advantage I think that it has. I also think there's a pretty large kind of marketing advantage to being a market making book, even that, as you said, like I think sometimes the fact that you get a reputation as someone who takes a bet and doesn't give any nonsense, and and maybe takes a higher limit, and maybe but really the no nonsense, really the like, if the bet is offered, you get the bet, and there's no the little ticker delays, and then they reject you and give you a different number, all that stuff. If you just get a reputation, I think that reputation has substantial, especially if you're in business long enough to let that reputation build. I think that gets customers, where where if you're a retail book, you're spending money to get the customer, and if you're a market making book, at least you do it a certain way, and you get a certain reputation. Maybe you get some of those customers for free. So I think those are a couple possible advantages to running kind of a market making operation rather than a like a pure retail.
Okay, and I've heard too one of the advantages of having sharper players is that they can there are benefits to actually having sharper
Well, the other
customer
thing,
base.
this is right. Well, the other thing that I think is, I think a lot of people, they kind of draw and I want to make clear, and the book makes clear, like this is not a dichotomy. You're not either a retail book or a market maker. I mean, in the real world, most books are a little bit of both,
Yeah,
and and how much of which they are depends on the sport, and so forth. So that's the first point. And then the other point is I think a lot of the people in the industry that think about, the types of betters, they think either, I'm going to go to the British words because a lot of these people are British, I have to say, you know, they talk about, oh, you're either a mug or a shrewdy, right? So you're either like a total ignoramus who's just throwing darts, or you are like a world beater, right? And they just seem to think about the situation in those in that kind of dichotomy terms, and they're like, you want to get rid of the Shrudies and have only the mugs, and and to me, it's like, well, it's a continuum. I mean, anybody who's met gamblers knows that, yeah, there's some people who are totally clueless, and then there's people who know some stuff but don't know some other key stuff, and like it's a pure continuum, and the thing is, like, the smarter you are with your trading, the more the bottom line is that the better line you can make as a book, right, using all information at your disposal, which is really what it is. I mean, you're going to try to put up the best line you can using all the information you have, using modeling information you have, using looking at what other books have, using it, looking at your own betting action, information from your own betting action. There's information, watching the news. I mean, there's information comes from tons of sources in real time, and really the entire problem is, how do I make the best line all the time as from my bookmaking operation, using all the available information. And it's ridiculous to me to say, like, if you don't make a better line, that you're not going to turn some of these quote unquote sharp customers into people who lose to you. I mean, if you're holding 4% on your markets, and and you can have a lot of customers who are fairly sharp, who basically will lose to you over time, and they'll be fine with it because maybe they're arbing, or they're whatever they're doing, or maybe they think they're beating you and they're just not,
sure.
and I think the industry in general really oversimplifies that whole dynamic, and really downplays the value of just plain putting up better numbers, the best number you possibly can, you know and how much that allows you to really make money off of almost all your customers.
Sure.
So yeah.
Okay. All right. So two other questions, and not necessarily related to the book, but um, got me. Your book got me thinking about some of these. So for serious, like a serious better who's crafted different models across different markets, in your opinion, what are the biggest obstacles in the way of making it a profession, going from like just being like a serious better to, hey, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, or this is what I'm going to do, for my living.
I mean, getting down.
Yeah.
That has to be the biggest problem. I mean, I mean, people say, hey, what, because so we started, with the in-play models. I mean, the idea was basically to point it towards betting. I mean, we were, the models were built to be betting models. And then when the Supreme Court thing happened, and, we kind of had a powwow, and we said, you know, where, how do we maximize, we've got what we think are basically the best in-play models for American sports, at the moment. And we thought that because they've been pointed at betting markets for a while, and we've seen the I mean, these markets are not big, and so we had a sense for where we were at compared to market, and and we said we think we have the best of this right now. how do we make the most money out of it? And frankly, we said, I think we should try to point it to the operator side, because, the huge problem is, I mean, we don't want to do anything illegal. And if you refuse to do anything illegal, and then, on top of, I mean, it's just hard to get down, I mean, it's just hard to find people willing to take your action on a consistent basis over the long term, if you're beating them. That's the core problem. So,
Sure.
yeah, I mean, I think that's always going to be the core problem. I think you're always going to be able to find people. I mean, sports betting's hard. Getting good numbers up is extremely hard. You know, and as a better, if you're smart enough and you're, willing to, I mean, you're clever enough, you're going to find spots to bet, and the whole problem is getting down. So I think that's the problem.
Okay.
I also think that there will be fewer and fewer mistakes. I mean, some of the mistakes are, you know 10 years ago the mistakes were bigger than they are now, and now the mistakes are bigger than they'll be in 5 more years. But I think finding someone willing to lose to you is always going to be the biggest problem.
Okay. Okay, and then the last one before we go into a different topic here is the since you have your toes dipped in both the poker world and the sports betting world, what which of the two have you found the most challenging to master and why?
I mean, I don't know that I've mastered anything.
Okay.
I mean, poker was very much like, it was literally just something I did as, my job wasn't working out, and, poker was booming, and, it was relatively easy to make money. I was never an elite poker player ever. I never
Okay.
claimed to be, not even close, and my books were, my idea for writing, I basically decided I didn't really want to work at becoming an elite poker player, because I didn't really want the lifestyle that came with that. I didn't want to, quite frankly, play in the high limit games with some of the people that play in the high limit games. I didn't really want to grind online a million times a day against, honestly, people who are probably younger and smarter than me. It's always going to be a losing battle, right? If
Okay.
whenever you want to gamble for a living, it's, the competition's always going to get better, and it's tough. I mean, it's tough. So and that's kind of why I went to the books, because I said, this is something that's, I enjoy doing, that's relaxing, that's, my books are very much targeted purely at, hey, I'm a recreational poker player. I'm a little more serious than a recreational poker player. How do I get good enough so that maybe I'm winning in like a 2-5 game, right? Which is, this is a low bar, but this is relatively low bar. But I never was like, hey, let's win in the nosebleeds. Let's be the best poker player in the world. Never was my interest at all. And and then when I switched to books, I never kind of pretended that was what I was going to teach you how to do. Um so what I did at poker was, not that hard. I would definitely say the sports stuff I do is harder now. I mean, it involves hard skills. I mean, it involves programming and math, and and I've had to kind of teach myself some of the statistical stuff, and machine learning stuff, and and then the other thing with sports is, like, you're wrong a lot. I mean, you
Yeah.
you build your model, and then your model's just wrong. And then you have to fix it, and it's just, it's a lot of work, and it's definitely not easy. So definitely I would say the sports stuff is harder.
Okay.
So
And then I know that like just watching the the tournaments on ESPN, like I noticed like a lot of the side stories of like seeing guys making side bets all the time. So like as do all poker players think that they're good sports bettors? Like I know you have your stuff, but like do I know that they're all degenerates, but like do some of them know like their limits? Like yeah, I'm just a degenerate. I'm not like really good at this. Like or do
I
they?
I I don't think too many of them actually think they're like legit good.
Okay,
I mean, I think, well, I do think sports betting is deceptive, because I think people, like, like what's deceptive about it is I think people don't understand how much market is behind a lot of these numbers, and how, if you're looking at an NBA side, you're looking at, 5.5, right? Like I think they don't understand exactly, how many smart people have looked at that number today, every second of the day, and have been basically pushing and pulling against that number. And then now they're looking at it 2 hours before game time. And I think they don't fully appreciate, like, a bunch of smart people basically put the number exactly where it is right now. And now you're looking at it for the first time and you have an opinion, and I think
Yeah.
they don't understand how little that opinion is worth. Um, so I definitely think I think that's fundamentally the deceptive thing about sports betting, like that sort of more casual people don't understand, kind of the depth of how that works.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think probably some poker players, but I haven't heard too many poker players really think that they can, like, could grind sports betting and just win,
Okay.
doing whatever they're doing. I mean, a lot of them will play stuff, but I don't know.
Just just more for the thrill of betting than actually.
Yeah, I mean, they like bet. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
they
That's. I
think
mean,
they're
that's what they.
smart. I mean,
That's what a lot of them do for a living. So.
they think they have an angle, right? They think they
Yeah.
thought of some angle, right? That they think is, and it's actually in the market, and they don't know it's in the market, and or whatever, right? They have some, like, oh, back to back game or whatever it is. I don't know, but some angle that's clearly in the market, and they don't understand enough about how it works to kind of know what that would mean for that angle to be in the market. And so, I mean, I think that stuff goes on, but yeah, I don't know too many that the other thing is, like, if you actually gamble, like, it's I mean, you delude yourself, but then at the same time it's just brutal. I
Yeah.
mean, even when you're winning, it's brutal, right? So, when you don't have an edge, I mean, it just I mean, I don't know, for me, always, like, whenever I think I have some kind of edge or don't or whatever, I mean, I get snaps of reality real fast.
Yeah.
It just, stuff does not work out. You're like, okay, maybe I'm wrong about that. So,
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, the next topic here was the COVID-19 discussion, and I want to say first of all, like, I think out of all the people have on my timeline, I think I found like 600 something people that you would. I felt like you were talking about it amongst the people I follow like the earliest. So what I wanted to bring up on the pod in regards to that was, at what point in time did you get the feeling that we were going to be dealing with something more serious when it came to this virus?
well, I mean, so I've been worried about pandemics forever. I mean, I mean, I just kind of have read enough history and just know that this happens and it sucks. It happens periodically, and so I've just kind of been like, literally, my whole life is on the back of my mind, like, we could have a pandemic, this could suck. And then, so when I first started seeing the headlines about it, and I knew about the SARS stuff, and I was just like, here we go, right? This is definitely a threat. And yeah, I mean, once I saw it go, really leave China, once I started seeing it in Iran, some of the stories coming out of Iran, which was kind of the next country that really, got it bad. I was like, oh boy. I mean, because once it's there, I mean, it's not containable anymore. So yeah, I was pretty concerned about. I still am, obviously. So, um,
Sure.
yeah.
Have you been social distancing a little longer than other people have?
Well, but yeah, but honestly, I'm kind of sad to admit. I mean, I actually got caught, surprised by it a little bit myself. I definitely, in the middle of February, like, I took a trip to New Orleans in the middle of February, and my attitude was, New Orleans is not really, you know, not really a big international travel spot. I kind of thought it was going to be not really a hot spot. And I was like, yeah, I'll go ahead and do my New Orleans trip, right? And I mean, and then, like, 3 weeks later, like, New Orleans is like
Yeah.
the worst spot in the whole country. And I was like, wow, And yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I definitely, like, I would say we were like maybe a week or two ahead of the rest of the world as far as, we went for our business, we went to work from home like, a week and a half kind of before they started really, you know, mandating it from on high and everything. But so I guess I'm sad to say no, maybe by a week, but not probably not by enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, as far as your initial presumptions of what might happen versus current reality, obviously, a lot of people, I mean, and by a lot of people, I mean pretty much everybody is kind of guessing at what might happen. And you've never claimed to be a doctor, obviously, but as far as your initial presumptions on what might happen, say like 3 or 4 weeks ago when you were, or maybe even longer, like 6, 7, 8 weeks ago, versus now. What are some things that you might have overestimated or underestimated about it?
So I thought the disease was slightly more deadly than it appears to be. Which is not to say that it's not deadly. It is absolutely a terrible disease. But January, I mean, some of the stuff coming out of China was really legitimately scary, and then some of these percentages were pretty high, the kind of like percentage of fatal cases was like, 4 or 5% they were estimating. And I was anchored to SARS, the first one, where I think the fatal cases were somewhere around 10%. So it was not, I remember an early tweet I made where I thought it was like 1 to 10% was my estimate for what, total, like, you're, basically the number of people who get infected, the percentage that are going to end up dying. I had somewhere between 1 and 10%. And I think that's probably too high. 1% might be a reasonable guess now, maybe even a little less than 1%, half a percent. If I had to guess, I'd guess somewhere between, half a percent to 1% now, which is lower, but it's still obviously. Um, so that's something that's changed. The other thing is, I mean, even though I saw it play out in China, I mean, it really has taken me by surprise. Like I was saying with New Orleans, how this thing is deceptive and it just spreads kind of silently, and then kind of then there's like this some super spreader event where like 200 people get infected at one party or whatever. I don't know. It's just it's definitely just a scary. It's a scary disease. It's not. Um, so that stuff I feel like I've learned, and then kind of the good side is I do feel like they're making inroads on figuring out how to treat it a little better, which is I think how we get kind of back to normal life is not a vaccine, but if they you know if I mean the ideal for normal life would be okay, you know, you start to have a symptom or somebody has a symptom and they tell you and then you go get tested, everyone gets tested, test comes back positive and then you get, the treatment regimen, which is whatever it's going to be, two antivirals, right? They give you and they have enough for roughly everybody that needs it. And that's to me the world that where we get back to normal quickly. And I think it might be coming, something like that. But yeah.
Yeah, I had like a little scare last week. I got like a little fever, and like anytime anyone's getting a little fever now, it's like a
For
complete
sure. For
panic.
sure.
And especially someone like me, I'm not the healthiest person. Like I don't really take care of myself as well as I
Right.
should. But I don't really. I haven't gotten a fever. The last fever I got was um, after a trip to Denver, and I being playing doctor, I attributed to being in altitude for 3 or 4 days, and being
Right.
active at work. But outside of that, having that little fever, I was like, crap. But
Well, and the thing is, like, you're like, well, I mean, at least for me, I mean, I've been basically in my house for the last 6 weeks,
yeah,
really haven't left very much. And it's like, man, if I got sick now, it's like, well, how did I get sick? Like,
yeah,
I'm trying to get like literally nothing right now. So, yeah, I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah. Me and my wife have actually been doing groceries through apps now. We're not even going
Yeah.
to the grocery store. Even I'm willing to pay a little bit of a premium for
Yeah, for
somebody
sure. Me
else.
too. I will happily, I tip them $20 when they bring
Yeah,
it, and I'm happy to have them do it for sure.
yeah. So I haven't been to a grocery store, I think, in over 3 weeks, which is about the time I've been working from home. So like my interaction right now is just with delivery drivers and the occasional drive-through. But my wife wanted me to. My wife was. I went to go pick up some beer yesterday and curbside, and you know, my wife was like, can you go maybe get some pop?" And then she like kind of pop. That's what we call soda in the
Right,
Midwest. Um,
right,
and I was like, yeah. And then she didn't want to force me to do it. We ended up getting more delivery today, so like I'm not. I'm being like very risk adverse, even though it's not like you know I don't think it would kill me, but who wants to get sick anyways? Like that's the whole thing. Like
right.
um, so okay, so as far as the overall impression on how the media has handled this, what's your overall impression with like what you've learned from the media, or like um, or just how they've presented everything related to the virus?
I don't know. I mean, I was extremely frustrated how I've been. I mean, obviously pretty frustrated. I feel like with most of the coverage. I mean, the biggest thing that frustrated me so much was how much everyone insisted on anchoring it to the flu for like months and months and months. The two huge messaging things that I just frustrated me was a how it was constantly like, let's compare it to the flu, right? It's a pretty different disease than the flu, which is why that's bad, because it's like it's because once you start talking about, oh, it's like how many people are going to die, well, the flu killed this many, well, now you're thinking about like the disease course is going to be like the flu, and it's not. Because with the flu, like, you get the flu, and I mean, I haven't had it that much, but like if you really get the flu, I mean, it just like hits you like a ton of bricks, and then you're like in bed for 3 days, and then you start getting better. And and like this thing, it's like nothing for 5 days, and then you get one symptom, and then you get two symptoms, and then and then 3 days later you can't breathe and you're in the hospital, right? So it's like the whole course of the disease is like totally different than the flu. And I think that just constant like, oh, it's the flu, it's like the flu, how many flu, like I think people were expecting it to behave like the flu, and I think like that kind of caught people off guard, because they weren't aware of kind of what the disease course looked like. The other thing that frustrated me was this big emphasis on like where they were trying to get younger people to take it seriously, and they were like, yeah, it only kills old people, but like, don't you care about grandma? And I was like, that's like the worst messaging I've ever heard. Like I was like, that's so terrible. Like, it's like it's I mean, it was just so bad for so many reasons. And obviously like it gets young people really really damn sick too. And like, especially, I mean, the middle-aged fat men are apparently, you know,
Hey,
not
you're talking to me right here. No, I'm just yeah.
I'm the heart
No,
of
no,
this
no. I'm just
demographic,
yeah.
right?
I
And
know
I
what you're
mean,
saying.
this is not a I mean, like, this is severe on a lot of younger people. And I feel like that whole messaging was really off, and really just got, I mean, really encouraged a lot of people who are, under 65. I mean, the messaging was like, do it for grandma one, and you're, 50, and you're like, oh, I'm not a grandma. Well, that was just wrong.
Yeah,
And I think a lot of the messaging was wrong. And man, I just wish, I don't know. I mean, it's just hard to go back in time, but I mean, especially in February. In February, I spent the entire month of February just saying like, what the hell is going on with my society? Like, this freight train is coming for us, right? And like, literally nobody seemed to care. And it was like, I mean, I couldn't, like, my mom actually got really sick. She actually died in February. She'd been sick for a long time, and she died, and she was in the hospital. So I was in the hospital with her for a few days in February. And like the hospital, like, I brought it, like, they didn't care. Like the whole, I mean, it was just like, it was unreal to me. That whole month, just like, it was like some kind of weird mass delusion thing. Like, this is just not happening. This can't happen to us. We're America. I don't know. I don't know, but it was just like this, and the stock market kept going up, and I was like, "What the hell is going on?" I mean, I don't even claim to understand the stock market, but like, it was just some kind of weird twilight zone for me where I was like, "This, train is about to hit us," and the whole world, the whole country seemed to be like total head in the sand about it, and that was just very. I was that was I didn't like that whole part. That was really weird.
Yeah.
So.
So you were mentioning the stocks. Did you do you have any stocks? Did you sell any stocks?
I mean, we saw. So I did. I didn't time it exactly right. I didn't understand. I mean, I did not understand. I still don't understand. I mean, now the stock market is rebounding now, and I Fed's printing. I don't know. I mean, it feels divorced from reality to me how the stock market behaves. Nowadays. But yeah, I mean, it was hitting. It hit like an all-time high or something when it was like the first cases in the U.S. were already coming, and I was like, I mean, this is about to be really disruptive. I don't understand why the stock market's at an all-time high. I don't know. Yeah, I don't claim any special knowledge there. You know, it just confuses me how it
Yeah.
behaves.
Yeah. Okay. So as far as like resources that you used to educate yourself on the virus itself, like what were some of the better ones that got you prepared for it?
I mean, I'm just on Twitter all the time, for better
Yeah.
or worse. Yeah, I mean, I just kind of tried to follow people who were taking it seriously. At first, I was kind of following the stuff coming out of China, which is I don't. I mean, that's a whole nother thing, but that was just full of propaganda. I mean, it was really hard to get you know any kind of clean information at that point, because it was just anything that has to do with China is just going to be propaganda from
Sure.
one side is slamming China and the other side is you know nobody actually wanted to talk about, well, what actually is going on with this disease. It was like China's terrible, no, China's great. No, I mean, it's like I don't care about that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then I've just been kind of following more and more people on Twitter, over the last few months, and just as I said, I mean, pandemic in general has been on my radar for years as like a thing that would cause us a lot of pain.
Yeah,
And
cuz
um
yeah, cuz even in your last tweet of the year or the first tweet of the year, you even reference like, something about as long as we don't have a pandemic,
right. I mean, little did I know it was already underway, right? I mean, I was like, I can't believe I tweeted that. Yeah, I mean, it's shit. Yeah,
did you get some shit for that?
I mean, a little bit. I decided to make it my pin because it was just too much
Yeah.
irony for me.
Yeah.
Couldn't help it. Yeah, I don't know. It's yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, I mean, this is a thing that happens, right? I mean, this is we're humans. We're so I always kind of felt like we were there was like too much complacency with respect to infectious disease. I mean, for all of human history, infectious disease has been like a massive, massive problem. And then really starting with the penicillin and stuff, and then some of the more vaccinations that got developed. I mean, we really beat it back, and I think to the point where people started getting really complacent about it, and I was like, one one day
Yeah.
someone's gonna eat a bat or whatever.
Well, I
I
did
mean,
I
you
did
know,
find it fascinating that Wimbledon actually had pandemic insurance,
right?
which I
Yeah,
never heard
I
of.
that was I'd never heard of that either. I should have bought pandemic.
I mean, I guess it cost them $2 million a year, but I mean,
I mean,
I guess it paid
yeah.
off.
I mean, I mean, they were getting 70 to 1. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Hard to
so,
argue with it.
so tying everything back to the sports landscape, do you think that the leagues are going to try to rush things, or do you think it's more like out of their hands and it's going to be more like how like state and federal governments respond to that impacts sports more than anything.
It's interesting. Well, actually, with this UFC thing that just happened, I don't know if you saw it. It was the headline today. I mean, UFC really wanted to put their event on, and I guess he claimed that he got shut down by ESPN and Disney. I'm not sure I don't understand all the politics of that, but basically he said he wanted to have it, and Disney told him no, and that was that. So I guess I don't know all the politics. If I were a sports league, I'd be looking at every way possible to try to get my league back going. I thought that the first one to start up would be NBA, and that they would try to have a playoffs, and maybe even try to finish up a regular season, then have a playoffs. And then sure enough, they basically came with the Adam Silver started floating the kind of plan that I'd come up with, where they pick one location, and they're talking about Las Vegas, and just kind of like put it in a bubble and test everyone every morning, and honestly, NBA players are not a huge at risk population for this virus in general. I don't think they're young and healthy, and you know the NBA players that did get sick, I don't think got that sick. Um, so that where they would. So that was my thought, and I guess that's still my thought. I think the NBA is going to try to put something together and try to play. I don't know. I don't know if I don't know if, for instance, the governor of Nevada would say not in my state. If they try to do it tomorrow, he I could see. He's definitely kind of ramping up the rules, not ramping them down at the moment. So, I saw the governor of California said not in my state with respect to the NFL, which I thought that was a little reckless, because that's what, 5 months from now, and he's already saying not in my state in September, and I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. If I were a sports league, I'd want to be up with a plan to get moving as soon as possible. That would be my attitude, and I'd be trying to think of every feasible way that I could do it safely. Probably without crowds. I feel like it goes without saying, kind of, at this point. But you know, I thought to put everyone in a hotel on the strip and play a bunch of games in T-Mobile, and televise them and test everyone every morning. And I mean, I don't know. That seems like it might work. Um,
So
so
is
that Yeah.
so do you think so based on you talking about the NBA, is that who you think will come back first, or
I
are you?
I think they have the best shot. They have the fewest players, right? They've
Yeah.
got the smallest rosters, the less they can do it all in one. They could play the whole thing in T-Mobile if they really wanted to. They could do it, play 4 games a day or something for who knows how long. Um, so they that's what seems the most feasible to me. MLB feels like a lot harder. I saw their proposal for using the spring training parks in Arizona, and that was kind of my thought about, well, if they're going to do it, that's how they would have to do it. But I don't know. I think a lot of the economics depends on the crowds coming to the games, and
Yeah.
and also I don't know. Like, they're talking about, oh, well, maybe we'll have a 50-game season. Is it worth it to run a 50-game MLB season? I don't know. And then the pitchers have to, they basically have to have some kind of spring training for the pitchers, and I don't know. MLB seemed less feasible to me. I could be wrong. I'm not. I'm sure if I'm MLB, I want to get going as soon as possible too. But NBA definitely seems like less of a. It definitely seems like NBA would have to come first, right? It seems like a lot less of a logistical problem to try to run NBA than to try to run MLB. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would expect NBA first.
Yeah. I saw that South Korea is going to be trying to play baseball, I guess, again.
Right,
Um, and we're nowhere near the level of containment that they are.
right,
So, I
right,
you could say, like, yeah, they could be an example, but until we get it under containment, I don't think we can really use them as a comparison point.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, I think it's going to be tough to have. I mean, I think it's gonna be tough to have baseball, but I don't want to like. At the same time, I don't want to be negative. I see some people on Twitter, I think, being unreasonably negative, where they're like, "I can't believe they're even talking about having football," and it's like, well, I mean, you don't know what's going to happen, right? This is an unpredictable event, and that's 4 or 5 months down the line, and I feel like it's a little irresponsible, some of the people who are being super negative about it. And I think everyone wants sports back, and no one wants anyone to get hurt or there to be a disaster. But I mean, I think it's perfectly reasonable to start thinking now about, how do we get it back, how do we do it, is
Yeah.
it feasible, and then let's do it. So but yeah, I definitely, I mean, like for instance, I mean, the work I'm doing now is, I'm doing NBA work right now, and the reason I'm doing it right now is because I think there's a fairly decent chance they come back and play their playoffs.
Okay.
So I'm gonna try to get ready for that. So that's
Okay.
that's informed the work I'm doing right now.
Okay. So I had someone on a couple podcasts ago that was like doing that like idea of playing in front of empty stadiums. So like, is that the kind of modeling that you're doing too, where you're kind of like seeing like presuming it's probably going to be, if they do play, you would have to anticipate it's going to be on a neutral court um,
Right.
for probably everybody. I'm guessing.
Right. Yeah.
So that's kind of what you have to have in mind when you're like when you and your team are like planning for this.
Yeah. I mean, and there would be a betting market, and the betting market would have an opinion, and we would rate that opinion whatever weight we thought it was worth, based on an unprecedented, we would, I mean, that's basically how we do everything. Is, we look at market information, and we look at, we kind of try to say, well, what is this reacting to, and then do we think this is reasonable or not? And we would do our best, I guess, is all I would say.
Sure. Okay, so
Yeah.
if you had to say like this is this is what's going to happen, you're saying you thinking sports are coming back this year then?
Yeah, I would be surprised. I wouldn't be shocked, but I would be surprised if we didn't have at least sports try to come back by the end of the year, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because yeah, one of the people who was asking questions wanted me to make sure that you gave a definitive answer, so I wanted to.
I mean, what do I know? I mean, I'm
Oh,
just some guy, right? But yeah, I mean, that's why I've obviously thought about it, because my business depends on it.
sure.
It's definitely bad for me if they decide to take the next 3 years off, for sure. But so maybe I'm being a little optimistic, but it's certainly in their interest to get playing again too, and it seems feasible. I mean, this is not the plague. I mean, this is a bad disease, but this is not Ebola gone wild. It's
Yeah.
not. It's and and the technology is going to get better. The testing is going to be more available. I think there's going to be some kind of frontline therapeutics for it, where, yeah, if you do get sick, guess what? You take, chloroquine or whatever it's going to be, whatever they come up with, and you probably don't get that sick. You're, sick for a week, and then, but the really bad illness doesn't set in very often. So, and once they get there, I don't see any reason why they can't explore playing, again, probably without crowds. So.
Okay. All right. I mean, I hope you're right. I'm normally not the pessimist. Maybe it's just me being protective of myself and just thinking like, all right, I just don't want to get the worst of it. I'm thinking like I don't, even if they allowed people to go to the games anytime soon, I don't think I'd even go. Um, and
Right.
I'm gonna be avoiding crowds for you know for a little while, probably even a little past when they say I don't know. I'm just gonna be overcautious about it, especially since I have a wife who's got health risks. So it's like I don't want to
For
be a
sure.
carrier for it. So like I'm treating it as if hey, it is the
Yeah,
play. So
I think they'd have some trouble selling some tickets, at least,
yeah.
some of the, I mean, yeah, I mean, I agree.
So okay. There was a couple listener questions, and one of them was just I had to put a TweetDeck column in my feed to see like if this Yep Blind TBH was like a somebody who normally trolls you, or if someone you have a friendly correspondence with, when he's asked, can you ask him why he's right on everything?
Oh, yeah, no, I think he's a like an odds maker from.
Okay,
I think he's from Ireland. He seems like a good guy. He's a smart guy.
okay,
Yeah, he's a sharp guy. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously he's giving me shit a little bit, but
yeah,
that's fine. That's fine. No, yeah, I like that guy.
okay. And then you covered a lot of the questions that one guy had about all the sports, the best way to get them back, and all that. The other one, the last one here, was from and I always butcher pronunciations of subtle Altery, yeah, Alterity. I am
Okay.
not. Yeah, yeah. Everyone knows me to mispronounce things. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that because my tongue tied. But he was wondering where the NBA in play odds are at. Is that like on your
Right.
roadmap?
So yeah, so that's a good question. So our original roadmap as a company was actually we actually punted NBA for a few reasons. Um, but the main thing is that we saw the biggest weaknesses in the kind of industries offering, especially with the college sports. So like college basketball, college football, what they have, I think is really not good at all. And I think most of the operators would freely admit that. And so we kind of decided to focus on where the need was at first. So that's why we did those sports, and we thought the need on the NBA was the least, or at least the industry would perceive it to be the least, and I think it's probably fair. And so that's kind of we put it off for that reason. We basically wanted to solve the problems that the industry had worst, solve them earlier, and then round out our kind of offering. So as I said a few minutes ago, like we actually are working on NBA right now, exactly because we think it might be the first sport to come back. So,
Sure.
and it's basketball. I mean, we have a college basketball model already. Obviously the NBA is different, but it's we've done NBA work before, so we've got a good kind of groundwork laid already for it. But yeah, we hadn't turned it into a. The other thing is we have limited. I mean, I don't know if it's obvious or not, but you know, when we're making, so we make lines, in play lines for all the games. So we were doing, all the NFL games, all the college football games. We were doing a bunch of the college basketball games. There's we have we have employees that we hired and trained to basically use our models. Make adjustments. And it's kind of a skilled job. The guys that we hired have been killing it. We're super happy with them, but it's a manpower thing. I mean, it costs us money to put more and more games up. So, as a startup business, if we wanted to put all the NBA up and all the MLB up and all the college basketball up, we'd have to hire 3, 4 more people. That's 3 or 4 more salaries, and then the question was kind of like, for what, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's why we didn't have NBA yet, but I'm right now trying to finish up our NBA product. So hopefully we'll have it. If they do play a playoff, we'll have it for the playoffs. Hopefully, and definitely want to do that. We'll definitely have something. I mean, if NBA comes back and plays, we will have NBA odds.
Okay.
And whether it's a well-oiled machine or it's kind of a little bit hacked together, we'll see. But we 100% will have NBA odds, and then for next season we completely plan to have NBA odds. So
Okay. And actually,
yep.
I did forget about a couple of questions because I did DM a couple people to try and get some thoughts because
Okay.
I knew that they um had either read your book or had just spoken of you on Twitter, and one of them was from. He used to be Stat Miles. I don't know what his handle is now, but he was wondering why you even wrote the sports betting book to begin with, because he said, luckily most people who own the book are American and don't have options on books, but if it became popular in Europe, game over. So, like, was it written? Do you have much of a European audience when it came to that, or do you even know like the overseas sales for that?
I don't. Well, it's definitely written for an American audience, and I think most of the sales are American. It's interesting, and all the examples from the books are American sports and everything.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that he says game over. I mean, I feel like, you know, you know, for people who haven't read the book, I mean, it's I don't know. Our goal in writing the book was really like kind of like this is a basic knowledge base, to get into sports betting, right? So it's not like I don't feel like we gave much secret sauce away, to so to speak. The I guess the most secret saucy stuff we gave was some of the live betting stuff where, especially people who maybe were new to it or didn't have a lot of experience with it, maybe they'd done more pregame betting. I definitely feel like the live section maybe gave people ideas, more directly that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. But I don't know. I mean, I feel like I mean, we're not giving angles away. We're not. I don't know. I kind of find that to be a strange comment. I feel like it's sort of basic theory and
Okay.
explain a little bit how markets work and the goal of the book. I mean, the reason why we wrote it was because we wanted, like frankly, we want a more educated American sports betting audience, right? Like we want the American sports bettor to be more educated, to be better at betting, because quite frankly, the audience that really, what we do has more value with that audience, right? Like if every sports bettor in America, for instance, is a total mug, as it were, and they're gonna bet, they're gonna take the worst odds on everything, and they're gonna 10-second delays on in play odds and come back for more, and they're just gonna take the worst of it on everything. Well, some people have told us explicitly, some people in the industry have said, why are you even bothering with these good in play odds? It doesn't matter. You just book the idiots. I mean, that, basically they say idiots will lose to anything. It doesn't matter what you put up. And, my attitude is that's stupid. And A, I don't think that actually reflects reality. And B, I don't think I think that's intensely cynical. And so, yeah, the book was kind of a response to that. And I said, I don't think American bettors are and should be idiots. And here's a book,
Okay.
with some information. I mean, that's why we wrote it. And I think our book is not going to be the last and not the best. I think other people are going to come out with, I was in the poker world long enough to see, so many good books and other things come out. And I think it's going to come out, to some extent for sports betting also. And, I don't think the American, bettor is going to be a total, donkey forever. And I don't want them to be. So,
Sure.
yeah, that was the point of the book. And, I don't know.
Okay.
That's why we read it.
So, like a last topic here, do you have any other books in the horizon? Like, are you spending any of this time writing anything? You got like, I know you had mentioned in the book that you weren't really going to touch base in that book about like modeling. So like, would that be revealing too much, or you got any other ideas in mind?
So our original book, actually, so we decided to write a book, I don't know, years ago, maybe, roughly for this reason, what I said, which is that we wanted to educate the American betting public a little bit, at least put some information out there. And the original topic was a little bit more kind of modeling focused and in the weeds. And then I mean, we wrote some stuff which is interesting to us, stuff about uncertainty, what uncertainty does to to distributions, and I thought it was interesting. But then, you know, I read it over and I said, we're going to have an audience of like 6 people for this book if we write it this way,
Yeah.
and I was like, this is not the book we need to write. We need to write a much more basic, kind of broadly appealing book that kind of, that was, so we kind of scratched that. Some of those topics I think are interesting. I'm sure other people, we have no monopoly on that information or insight at all. And I'm sure other people are going to write that stuff in books. I mean, I've seen books on modeling that have come out that are good, and then there is a little bit of a secret sauce aspect to, the way we build models. I mean, I think we've built some really effective models, and I have my ideas about what we do right that other people do wrong. And I don't really want to put that in a book,
Sure.
particularly. So, I don't know. We have the short, the long. That's a long answer to say that at the moment we don't have anything planned. I could see us writing another book at some point, but we haven't been. We're kind of working on our business stuff and trying to get our NBA stuff, better and built, and we're writing software is what we're doing during this time, and
Okay.
hopefully we keep doing that for a while. So
Okay. Great. Well, I think that wraps it up. There's nothing else on the outline that we haven't covered. So, is there anything else that you wanted to
I
say as
mean,
last words here?
no, I mean, I really appreciate you having me on. I enjoy doing podcasts, and I know the folks who listen to your podcast are really, tend to be a smart kind of sports betting audience. And, I appreciate you having me on and putting me in front of them, and hopefully they'll tear me apart and I'll learn something, or,
Oh yeah,
I don't know.
that's what I'm always waiting for. I'm always waiting for somebody to tear these things apart, and I'm like, yeah, at least I reached some of those people. Like,
Well, this is how I use the internet. I mean, my favorite thing about the internet is that if you say something that's dumb, someone will explain to you exactly why you're an asshole. I really like that about I mean, this has been how I've learned things on the internet for 20 years. So definitely, if I say something stupid on Twitter or anything, feel free to point it out to me.
sure.
So
All right. Well, Ed, thanks for joining. Everyone, once again, thanks for listening. Everyone, stay safe, and talk to y'all soon.